This podcast is supported by patrons. You can find a full list of them in the description of this episode. Hello, listeners and viewers of Good Morning BSS World podcast. As every month, at least this is something what we have committed together with Rod, we are going to share with you some updates, some news, and some interesting stories directly from the GBS world of Africa. Today, there is with me Rod Jones. Hi, Rod, how are you?
Hi, Wiktor. Thank you so much. It's always a great privilege and a pleasure to be with you, and we're looking forward to sharing time this morning.
I am very happy that we are seeing another time on my show, especially that there are a lot of things happening in Africa. I know that there are some updates which you are going to share with us today, and there are next steps moving forward to the big event which is going to take place somewhere in the middle of the year. Probably the date is still going to be agreed in the coming weeks and months. But anyway, the big one of the big things is happening the week after we are recording today's show. What's happening on the first week of February 2025?
Right, we're very excited about that, and thank you for your support on that. So on the 5th of February at 3 p.m., which is South African Standard Time, we're running the first of a series of webinars, this being the launch function or launch webinar for the the Africa Federation of GBS Associations. So my colleague and well-known personality in the GBS space, Mark Angus. Mark and I will be co-hosting, and we will have the 5 regional representatives representing the steerco of the Africa Federation, giving their views and their heads up on what's happening in their regions. And also it'll be an opportunity to discuss the objectives of the Federation. Why are we doing this? Where do we see value in it? Be an opportunity for participants to question the panelists as well. And also to share the wants, needs, and desires of the different regions, because the last thing we want is to be dictatorial in any way. This is a totally democratic federation, and we're taking input from all sources. My colleagues and I, Mark, Tracy, and myself, are really the patrons of it. We sit in the background and steer, but it's the steerco, and very soon in the next few months, we will have elections for the board, and it'll be the board that will be taking those decisions, such as where and when will we hold the launch conference event. So yeah, very exciting coming up, and I urge anybody who's able to get the links, which hopefully you can put it in the notes, to register for the webinar on the 5th of September. 5th of February.
I will definitely do so. Maybe on the 5th of September there will be another webinar. Who will know? That's still in front of us. We will see. Rod, you have mentioned regions, and having in mind that not necessarily everybody is perfect with the geography or with the way how we are foreseeing certain regions of certain continents, how Africa is being seen? What kind of regions can we identify in Africa?
Okay, the way we've structured the federation, we have the North Africa region, which covers Egypt, Morocco, Algeria, and that is being looked after by the steerco member, Rulana Rashwan. And so there's a lot of potential happening in North Africa. We have Foundeva expanding, we have Concentrix expanding, we have CCI with its new site in Alexandria, Morocco soon to be hosting the GITEX Africa in April. So a lot of activity happening in that North Africa region. So we've looked at clustering the North with those countries, and perhaps expanding to other countries in that area. If we come down slightly south now to East Africa, in fact, the steerco member for East Africa is Von Wiesen Zwedi from Ethiopia, and he's looking after Ethiopia, Kenya, and Uganda will also fall into that cluster. And there's, once again, some really exciting activities coming in from that region. MasterCard Foundation has put together a project that's targeting 25,000 new jobs in Ethiopia. Ethiopian government is partnering with the UAE, essentially in the digital skills development. They're planning a regional BPO conference, which will be in Ethiopia, looking at global investors. And then the Kenyan BPO associations, of which there are two, um, uh, starting to get well organized there and starting to represent the interests of the major BPO players in that region. So, East Africa, then we have what we call Central Africa, and our SteerCo member there, Chantal Kayoga, based in Rwanda. And Rwanda, as you may know, if you're interested in BPO in Africa, has shown the world that there's a lot of potential and high quality delivery in English and or French coming out of Central Africa. And once again, MasterCard Foundation is targeting a program to generate 20,000 jobs in the next 5 years, of which 3,000 are literally taking place, net new jobs as we speak now. T-Tech has moved into Rwanda as well with about 2,600 jobs by 2025-26. So that's all happening at the moment. So that's Central Africa. Then if we move over to West Africa, which is one of the areas that I think we all need to keep a lot of focus on. West Africa, which is looked after by a personality who's becoming quite well known in international circles, Amal Hussein, Outsourcing Nigeria Association. They have strong support from government. The World Bank is really prioritizing outsourcing and BPO and GBS, and a lot more BPO investments coming into Nigeria. Outsource Nigeria recently, this last week, held a function in London, attended by a lot of our BPO colleagues. Peter Ryan was there, for example, and was well attended by potential investors. So West Africa, essentially at the moment, is focusing on Nigeria. Ghana is an upcoming BPO player. There are several operators there. We, as the Federation, are assisting the local operators to create and form a bona fide, a representative body. And then coming down south, my long-standing friend and colleague, Reshni Singh, who is the CEO of BPESA, which is our national body for BPO and GBS in South Africa. She represents the southern region. A lot of activity happening coming up soon. I don't know if you're aware, but the B20 summit is happening here in Cape Town in November. So there'll be a lot of interest in there, particularly in the economic space. BPESA has recently redeveloped the South Africa and Southern Africa value proposition, which is going to the market. So that's set for release soon. And interestingly enough, South Africa, if you know the BPO market, has essentially been Cape Town, Durban and Johannesburg. There's a lot of moves now to go to what we call the tier 2 cities, places like George, Knysna, and much smaller cities where there's less pressure on labour than some of the others. Some concerns, and I think this is true right across Africa, but particularly here in South Africa, concerns about the new Trump administration and the potential misalignment of international policies, shall we say. So next 2 or 3 months, we'll be watching that carefully to see, will our government align with the new presidency and the new administration, or are we heading for conflict? But I think one way or another, we'll probably work our way around that. We've also got some interesting things starting to happen down here in our part of the world, which is Namibia and Botswana and Zimbabwe, our neighbors, all starting to gather momentum, particularly Zimbabwe, where there are 5 or 6 BPO operators currently doing business there with the potential to expand. So I'll be in Zimbabwe in the second week in February running my seminar in Harare. And at the end of the month, I'm going to Zambia, which also is showing a lot of potential in the BPO space. I'm a major operator in Zambia and Zimbabwe, which is ZimWorks. A lot of growth in their employment, essentially servicing the US market. And then, of course, we consider them to be part of Africa, is our French speaking island neighbors of Mauritius. I've had the privilege of spending holidays in Mauritius, which is quite a treat for many South Africans. There's a growing BPO industry, probably in 2,000, 3,000 seats across the operators in Mauritius, and we're assisting them to form an association and to become part of the federation. So, a lot of activity across Africa. We, as I said, we'll bring a lot of this to the fore in our webinar on the 5th. And then every first week of every month, we'll have other webinars dealing with, for example, new business development strategies, our BPO to Africa branding and campaigns. By then, we will have, I think, a good fix on when the launch conference will take place and where it will take place. So, yeah, a lot of these things are happening and very exciting indeed.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will be looking forward to this what you were mentioning in here. But I have one thing which came to my mind. Having this what you have mentioned, 25,000 new jobs in Ethiopia, 20,000 new jobs in Rwanda, and it was earlier today when I found out an article where the Concentrics actually announced 16,000 new jobs within 4 years in Egypt. Yeah, so those are huge numbers. Come on, only those three things, if we sum up together, is like 70,000 new jobs which are going to be created in Africa in coming years. This is absolutely a huge growth.
Yes, indeed. And although we haven't concluded the research yet, GBS World and Genesis Analytics have an ongoing program of researching all the different countries and their GBS BPO potentials. But the rough figures that we've got, if we put it on a 5-year projection, is we believe that Africa can create a million jobs within the next five years. And some people believe that that's a conservative figure because I believe that once the infrastructure infrastructure of the federation is in place and we start getting a lot more knowledge sharing, opportunity sharing, the credibility of the African value proposition will increase significantly. We'll be start bringing the analysts and the influencers from all over the world to say, don't take our word for it, come and see. Come to Egypt, come to South Africa, come to Morocco, come to Mozambique, come to any part of Africa and see for yourself that we have mature, reputable operations. And my belief is any one of those operators can scale up very quickly. I mean, the one thing Africa is not short of is youthful labor. We're a billion plus at the moment, people, and if I remember correctly, 80% of the population's under 30 years old. Um, so that youthful, tech savvy, social media savvy, ready to work youth, almost a fountain of opportunity.
And this 1 million, I assume this is voice and non-voice services.
Yeah, difficult to categorize it, but I think a lot of it will be non-voice. Um, and we're almost doing that digital leapfrog into utilizing digital skills, utilizing AI. It's quick, it's easy to ramp up, and there's no shortage of talent.
Earlier on, when you were mentioning this tier one, tier two locations in South Africa, I just recalled in my mind that we had a very, very similar story in Poland, the country where I am based on every day. That like 20 years ago or so, there were usually the BPO investments in the tier one locations, and there were three cities in my country. But later on, this has moved to tier two, tier three, and now to tier four locations. So we are seeing that in a line of time, actually, this business, this type of services is going to smaller and smaller cities, although with the potential and with the skills which are needed for the GBS industry. So now it looks like this is the same thing is happening in South Africa.
Well, not only in South Africa, we have reports coming in from Kenya where there are small micro BPOs operating 100 kilometers outside of Nairobi, for example, and Mombasa, going to the small university towns with micro operations, and that we're seeing very definitely here in South Africa. Another trend we're seeing in South Africa is there are a couple of the really big operators. One of them is the well-known Merchants Group, who are taking call centers into the lower cost, what we call the townships, low cost residential areas. So they're moving the contact centers where the workforce are located. It's quite expensive to do that, but it certainly has significant societal impact. And I think it's something I should have mentioned when we talk about the Africa Federation. One of the key drivers behind it is to try to ensure ethical employment, ethical impact sourcing. Impact sourcing and measurable impact sourcing. It's all well and good to look at the SEG models, etc. But what we really want to see is when we employ an agent, what is the societal impact when that wage goes home to perhaps a dwelling with 8 or 10 or 12 people in it? How is that wage or that salary spread out? And what is the societal impact? That I think is one of the most exciting things if we look forward to the potential. Let's say it's 1 million jobs, and I still think that's conservative. That has the potential to have a knock-on effect of the lives of 10, 20, 15 million people if we take households and dependencies. So we would welcome any investors looking for high quality, um, lower cost. I'm not saying low cost. We don't want to position Africa as a sweatshop low cost location. It will certainly be 30 to 40% lower than most European or US operations.
Yeah, it is. It is. We can see in here that those are lower costs, but probably this is not even the time uh, to call any destination to be the low cost destination, because there is always a combination of the cost, of the skills, of the logistics, and so on and so on. Yeah, but of course there are locations which are more attractive from the perspective of the costs which you need to cover over there. Also, when you were talking about this impact. Sourcing, ethical impact sourcing. Uh, I believe that some time ago in Europe, I have found some kind of a survey, not survey, it was like a white paper or a report, which was showing how many new jobs are being created in the area where the BPO industry is growing. So, showing that, for example, 10 or 12 people in BPO create one or two extra jobs all around in shops, in services, all around, and so on and so on. I think this is also a good area to be calculated later on to see how the GBS industry impacts any other industries which are just in the neighborhood when such operation center is growing. Yeah.
Yeah, there are a number of initiatives of that nature, starting to monitor, I call it societal impact. Um, so it's not just that one agent we're employing. We really need to see, as you quite rightly point out, the knock-on effect in terms of transportation, catering, retail, education, and yeah, I look forward over next 5 to 10 years, if I must last that long, to actually see that impact taking place across our beloved Africa.
Okay, Rod, thank you very much for this update today. Do we have anything else to be added?
No, I thank you for the platform and for the opportunity to share what I find to be really the most exciting part of a 50-year career that I've had in call centers, contact centers, BPO, GBS, whatever we want to call it nowadays, CX, because it's almost a culmination of putting all this many years of working in Africa into focus now. So, and once again, thank you for your ongoing support. Really value that.
Rod, this is my pleasure, and I keep my fingers crossed for this 5th of February, which is a few days from now, from the recording of this podcast. And I am going to be there, so I'm going to listen to this, what you are going to share with the global audience, keeping my fingers crossed for those news, because those are the news for the GBS world, I would say, to find out what is happening in the heart of Africa, in the continent, who managed actually to create the cooperation between most of the countries where the GBS services are being provided. Yeah, this is something really very interesting and worth to get familiar with. So I'll be there. We will see what you
Yeah,
will say.
wonderful. There's another point about Africa, just as we wrap up, it crossed my mind now, is, down here in not far from where I live is known as the cradle of mankind. And the anthropologists can actually trace the origins of humankind, literally 10 kilometers from where I'm sitting right now, and the migration up through Africa and across the rest of the world. So it's time the BPO industry came back to Africa, to the origins. So yeah, nice little anecdotal story there. But
So going back to the cave of a mankind.
that's it, to the origins. There we go.
Thank you very much, Rod. We see each other on your webinar, and then in a month from now to have another wrap up of what's going on in the GBS in Africa. Thank you very much for today.
Thank you, Victor.